Traffic. I've been wanting to get into Steven Soderbergh's movies, and this one was pretty good. I don't think it is quite as great as many people make it out to be, but it certainly is a very entertaining and emotionally engaging movie that has something to say. I think the two best performances in this movie come from Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. Both of them really do act well and match their written characters perfectly. Soderbergh has made use of some very stylish cinematography that makes the intertwining stories of the film seem like they're based around real-life people, which I think is important in allowing audiences to fully embrace what the movie has to say. Despite being a piece of fiction, Traffic really does tell the absolute truth about the futility of drugs and the war on them. At times, I did find the movie to be a little bit dreary, but it doesn't stop it from engaging me through its runtime. At the end of the day, nobody wins when it comes to drugs, and Traffic says that exactly. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. Escape from the Planet of the Apes. As you know, I've been getting through the movies in the Planet of the Apes franchise, and so far I've liked every single one of them. As far as the originals go, this is my favourite of the sequels so far. I thought this was a much better movie than Beneath the Planet of the Apes. The 1970s setting was definitely a nice change to the story, since it was interesting to see how modern humans would respond to the talking apes, as opposed to the way it was in the previous two. Kim Hunter and Roddy McDowall do a great job at playing Zira and Cornelius, two significant characters from the original, and I like the new characters, such as Dr. Hassline. It doesn't have quite as much of a wow factor as the original did, and I did find the ending to be a little bit disappointing, but it is a pretty good movie and, in my opinion, an improvement over the second film. I'd give Escape from the Planet of the Apes an 8 out of 10. The Gods Must Be Crazy. Afraid I haven't a lot to say about this one. It's a really cool look at the effect of the dominant sides of the world on more traditional cultures, using Kalahari Bushmen as an example, and it highlights the aspects of society that ours should borrow from theirs. The actors all do very good performances, especially the Bushman who was hired to work on the film. The humour is filled with a lot of silly slapstick that is occasionally funny at best, only slightly though. A nice little movie, but that's about it. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Predator. I've seen this one numerous times over the years, and I've always thought it was a pretty good action movie, but never have I been a die-hard fan of it. This viewing was probably my most enjoyable one, but I don't really have a reason why, other than I think that it might just be my own personal maturation. As far as Arnold goes, his acting in this one is quite good for his standards, so I would say his performance as Dutch is one of his very best. I also really like the performances by Bill Duke, Carl Weathers, and Sonny Landham. I really like the tension that the movie creates. You can't help it, you feel like you're isolated in the jungle with these commandos, far from civilization and hunted like an animal. And it's also hard to not love the imagination put into the extraterrestrial predator. I don't think it's quite as good as some say, but I do think it is a generally very good movie. I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. The Sweet Hereafter. A girl I met online recommended I watch this one since it was one of her personal favourites. After viewing it, I have to say that while it isn't by any means one of the best movies I've seen, it's certainly one of the most unique. The film is centred on the effects of a school bus accident on a small town community, and a lawyer who tries to launch a lawsuit to get compensation for the parents. It's a pretty interesting idea for a movie. The plot jumps around quite a lot, but it doesn't hurt the film as a watching experience. It gives it a very distinct feel and also adds to the emotional suspense. Although you can tell it was shot very cheaply, the film has very interesting cinematography that's very smooth. Ian Holm and Sarah Polley also delivered excellent performances. Not everyone would like this, but one of my friends didn't, but I'd say give it a go. It went by very quickly for me, and I enjoyed it. I'd give The Sweet Hereafter a 7.5 out of 10. The Artist. I was looking forward to this one for a long time since it received such enormous praise and won Best Picture, and while I certainly did enjoy the film, I don't see what the fuss is all about. Sure, it's a very different movie for this time because it's silent and in black and white, But if this film wasn't in that format, I really don't think it would be looked at so highly, so I have to say that this film was basically just an exercise in style over substance. It's very well directed, has great cinematography, and the performances are overall great, but I think that this one functions much better as a tribute to early cinema, as opposed to just being a great story to stand on its own. You'll probably disagree with me, but I think The Artist is overrated and simply just a pretty good movie, and not really the masterpiece that some people make it out to be. I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith. I haven't watched the Star Wars prequels in years, and although I don't have much interest in watching the first two again anytime soon, I remember I always loved this one. I first saw this film back in 2005 when it was released. I was 11 years old and I left the theatre thinking it was the best movie ever. After watching it again, I was able to pick up on some flaws, but I do still think of it as a great action movie and a cool little link with the original trilogy. I'm pretty mixed on the acting. Ewan McGregor and Ian McDiarmid are absolutely great in my eyes, but Natalie Portman is not, and neither is Hayden Christensen, although he had improved enormously over the previous one. My favourite character of this film has got to be the Emperor. McDiarmid plays him so well, and I can't help but be fascinated at all the manipulation he does within the story. I also can't help but love Mace Windu, not because of the character or anything, but because he's Samuel L. Jackson. That's just friggin' awesome. The special effects and action scenes are absolutely breathtaking. I loved every second of them. I also really love the score, and at times it can actually make things work when something else like the writing or acting is not doing very well, which is fairly commonplace in the film. This is not as good as the original trilogy, of course, but still is a highly entertaining movie in my honest opinion, despite its flaws in some of its acting and its dialogue. I give Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith an 8.5 out of 10. Thunderball. As some of you know, I've been getting into the James Bond movies. I hadn't seen any of them until I watched Dr. No a few months ago, so I'm taking the opportunity to watch all of them in order. I've liked them all so far, and this one is no exception. Thunderball is a great action thriller. Sean Connery delivers a fantastic performance as secret agent and womanizer James Bond, as he did in the previous three movies, and I'm sure he's going to deliver the same sort of acting in the next few movies he was in. I really like the villain in this one, although he isn't my favourite, and one thing I'd also like to comment on is the brilliance of the action scenes. As far as the Bond movies I've seen so far go, I can easily say this one had the best action scenes. The underwater scenes really are a bit of a spectacle. While I do prefer Goldfinger and probably From Russia with Love, I still thought this was an ideal secret agent movie that other films of the genre should look to for influence. I look forward to seeing the next James Bond movie. I will give Thunderball an 8 out of 10. Desperate Man Blues. My good friend on YouTube, Dr. Hassline, very kindly sent me a copy of this documentary. I was pretty excited to see it, and I can say it really has lived up to my expectations. It's about a man named Joe Buzzard who has an enormous collection of records, and I found the film to be a very reflective experience. Joe reminds me a lot of myself when it comes to his passion for his collecting, but for me, it's movies instead. In that sense, if you're a collector of absolutely anything, this is the ideal movie for you to see. The music isn't really my taste, but it matters not. The man himself is who you want to see, and he's entertaining from beginning to end. It's a very short movie, only just over 50 minutes, but I really adored every second of it, and I wanted it to go on even longer. And I highly recommend it if you can get yourself a copy of it, which are hard to find at a reasonable price. I would give Desperate Man Blues an 8.5 out of 10, one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. Before Sunset. I spoke about Before Sunrise in my last update, and discussed how I thought it was a fantastic romance film. Upon seeing this, I can say that This is almost as good as the original, and it really is surprising to see that they've managed to make a sequel to a romance that succeeds in so many ways. It builds upon the relationship established in the original, taking age into consideration, which I thought was a wonderful touch. The story moves in real time, which I think is fantastic. It really just grabs you from the beginning and never lets you go until the closing credits, and it makes the 80-minute runtime seem like 40. Hawke and Delpy delivered great performances once again. The film doesn't quite have the same atmosphere that the first did, but delves into character development and conversation a lot more, which I guess evens it out a bit. I heard Richard Linklater is planning a third film, and considering his great accomplishment with this, I really am looking forward to seeing it. Both Before Sunrise and Before Sunset are fantastic films that are definitely worth owning on DVD, in my opinion. See both of them if you haven't. I'd give Before Sunset an 8.5 out of 10. That's my video, guys. I hope you liked it, and I look forward to doing the next update. Goodbye.